Maddy Glab joining us right off the top of the show here, and we'll get to that in just a second. But we are out here at the Delta Sonic, 2970 West Henrietta Road.
Come get a car wash.
And
Let's go.
The car wash line is up and running.
It is now. Yeah.
But yeah, we're out here, and some fans are strolling in. Happy to have them with us and observing the show. So pretty cool to be out here, amongst our public. Steve already making rabbit ears behind Maddy because that's what he does. And training camp is done, guys. It's over.
Yeah.
It's a wrap.
What the heck? We blinked and it was done.
Yeah, we'll talk with Sean McDermott a little bit today, and it kind of makes you feel like, okay, we're wrapped up here. But they have done nothing. They haven't cut anybody. They haven't really sustained any significant injuries at this point, unless I'm forgetting somebody. Some minor stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But we still haven't seen him play a game.
12 practices so far. We did 11 out here at St. John Fisher University, one at Highmark Stadium. That was the return of the blue and red practice scrimmage. So we've been out here for about 2.5 weeks now. It's time to go back to Orchard Park, to Highmark Stadium, for the guys to go through the rest of training camp and begin preseason practices, really. We've got that Colts preseason game coming up on Saturday, and we heard from Sean McDermott earlier, and he really said, once we get into these preseason games, we'll start to see some of the competitions going on between position groups. Hopefully that starts to take shape, take form as to who are the guys that are going to win those spots. Cornerback, linebacker, right guard. There's still some competitions going on, and Sean McDermott said, we haven't seen a guy in some of these spots really emerge as the guy who's going to be the starter. So we'll see once the reps start to become live, because we've seen a lot of thud the last 2.5 weeks. We really haven't seen any live reps out of these guys yet.
It's going to take some preseason games to create some separation, because Coach McDermott said this morning nobody's really separated themselves yet, so still pretty close in some of those position battles that Maddy mentioned. If you are leaving training camp now to head back home and you're going back to Buffalo, stop here. Pop in, whether you're going to need gas, got to fill up your tank, whether you want to wash your car after the rainstorm we had this morning, or whether you need some snacks for the road trip back to Buffalo, you can do that and stop here where we are at 2970 West Henrietta at the Delta Sonic location. Or if you're local and you're in the area, you want to pop by and say hi, check out the show for a little bit, be happy to say hello to you as well. But we've got Maddy here right off the top of the show because training camp has concluded, and that means instantaneous training camp awards. Her awards are already up on BuffaloBills.com, but we thought we would amplify those here on the show today. So kick us off, Maddy. What do we usually start with? MVPs, right?
Let's do MVPs. We'll do offense first. And, this could go to a few different guys, but you've got to give it to Josh Allen himself. It couldn't go to anybody else because the way that this offense works, of course, it's through Josh Allen. Returning players like Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Dawson Knox, James Cook, that chemistry with those guys, it looked like he took another step. His connection with Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis seems to be on another level entering this season. So that was really exciting to watch throughout training camp. He had several throws that he fired a bullet, through a tight window, or made an impressive touchdown throw. He is that dude. He is that guy. You wonder, how can you get even better as you enter your 6th NFL season? And he said to reporters early on, it's about taking care of the football and not doing too much on my part. And we saw some practices where the offense struggled to take care of the football, but I think we saw them clean things up quite a bit as we ended training camp here at St. John Fisher University. Didn't see too many interceptions toward the last week of practices, but I think Josh and Ken Dorsey, the offensive coordinator for the Bills, as they enter their 2nd season together, that communication is going to be on a different level, better than it was last season. So I think we can expect a lot out of Josh and a lot out of this offense.
There was one play, Steve, yesterday you and I both watched.
Yeah, I heard you on this morning with Jeremy and
Dalton
Joe.
Dalton Kincaid down the left sideline eventually gets open on a corner route for what would be like a 20-yard pass play, and he's probably stepping out of bounds after that. But before he comes open, Josh checks it down to Latavius Murray in the right flat, completely uncovered. He goes 70 yards for a touchdown. Those are the kinds of take what they give you plays, right, that Josh needs to get back to instead of looking for the home run ball every time.
Yeah, because in the past, even when Josh did go to the checkdowns, it was late. And there was always somebody recovering, so
there wasn't yards after the catch to be had.
The catch, yeah. So going to that early, because in that particular play, and we saw this in the regular season last year, even at the NFL level, the Bills do it. Every team does it defensively. Once in a while, a guy gets loose and runs free. They forget about him. They cross their wires, and a guy goes uncovered. You take that right away if you see it. There were times last year Josh didn't want to take it. He wanted to get the big one. And yesterday was an example of one of those times when he said, you know what, do it quick. Don't wait on anything. Just go. Forget about the long throw. Take what they've got now and get the big play. And he did. So hope it's indicative.
Yeah. And this is a time to test things out, to try and push the needle in certain ways, to try and do something that you may not do in a game to see if it works in training camp. So in a lot of ways, Josh is trying things out with some of the new receivers and some of the returning receivers and tight ends to see what is going to work come week 1 and beyond.
Yeah, and to be rewarded in that way by taking the check down and getting a 70-yard run after it. I mean, that's going to go down for him as a 2-yard pass, but he gets 72 yards on the play because of what Latavius Murray did afterwards.
Yeah.
All right, you got 2 more MVP awards.
So we got defensive MVP. I'm giving that to Jordan Poyer. He had a couple vet rest days toward the end of camp, but it was really his presence in the beginning of camp. He had 2 interceptions, I believe, several pass breakups, and this was a guy who was injured, who was beaten up quite a bit last season, played through a lot of those injuries, so you're wondering how can a guy come back, especially a player who is older like Jordan Poyer. Thankfully, we have him in Buffalo for 2 more years as he re-signed with the Bills. We weren't sure what that scenario was going to be like, if Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer would be back together for at least 1 more year. Thankfully, they are. And you could see just how important those 2 people, Micah and Jordan, are to this defense. They are the anchors. You have Sean McDermott now calling the plays on defense, and to know who you have in the secondary, to trust those guys who came in Sean McDermott's first season. You can do things as a first-year play caller in Buffalo. Yes, I know he's done it before, but you have a better sense of things when you've had a player now on the team for 6 seasons together, for 7 seasons together
and
now.
Don't forget, we didn't even think he was going to be here.
Yeah.
That he was going to be a free agent, and all of a sudden he gets to free agency, and every other safety in the world is on free agent as well. The market's flooded with guys, and his age probably put him down the list for a lot of teams. And he said, you know what, I'm just going to take the deal the Bills can give me and stay here and try and win a ring. So good to have him on the field. He plays at a high level, all-pro level. He gutted out the entire season, was kind of part of the glue that held a wobbly ship at the end of the season after Damar's incident. Kind of held it together, helped the guys hold it together. So it's good to see him back. Good to see him. Amazing we're here with him as a defensive MVP at camp, where we were last year we were resigned that we were going to have to say goodbye to a good friend.
I know. And the balls were coming his way during practices. Brownie, you and I talked about that quite a bit. The action was coming Jordan Poyer's way in several practices, and he answered going up against the best of the best on offense.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is he's coming out of training camp healthy. Knock on wood.
Yeah.
Because that was not the case last year. He had the elbow injury already. Suffered in training camp. All right, rookie MVP. I think this is probably one of the easiest ones.
Oh my gosh, if you were at practice, you got blessed with seeing Dalton Kincaid within this offense. And I know we want to temper these expectations, as Sean McDermott and Ken Dorsey have been telling us to do so. But it's hard when you see Dalton out there and you see the hands that he has. You talk to players, you talk to coaches, and it's like, this guy does not act like a rookie on or off the field. He carries himself in a different way. And then you watch practice and you see the balls that Josh Allen is throwing to Dalton Kincaid. I remember one where Tyrell Dodson was on him, and Josh threw one down the middle, and it could have been a little bit of a flag on the defense on Tyrell, because he was kind of tugging at Dalton Kincaid, and Dalton started to fall to the ground because the ball was a little bit lower by Josh Allen's placement, but Dalton kind of shot out one arm to be able to pick up the ball before he hit the ground. It was an incredible play. It was very impressive. He had several of those throughout training camp, and you can tell this guy is going to have a role on offense.
Right. We can't stop talking about the guy because he's a number 1 draft pick. First of all, every guy like that gets a lot of attention during training camp. But Brownie and I, you try and articulate why everybody's so excited about him, because he'll catch a crossing route, turn it up, but I told Brownie this: if we had traded for an All-Pro tight end, name a guy, you would have expected him to practice as well as Dalton Kincaid is practicing. You don't see those guys very often practice. You see them in games and stuff. And we have not seen Dalton Kincaid in a game yet, but he has played at a high level in a pro environment consistently for what now 2.5, 3 weeks.
And maybe
he looks like a pro.
And maybe the most encouraging thing is the last 2 days of camp, Dawson Knox has looked unbelievable.
Yeah.
The last 2 days, he has dominated in the passing game. It was like tight end. There was one scoring drive in the 2-minute drill, 4 straight passes. First 2 to Dawson Knox, next 2 to Dalton Kincaid, touchdown.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, it was off a tip ball on the touchdown
But
catch.
he was there to make the play. Sometimes it's not easy to catch that deflection. And Dalton, again, the hands have showed up.
Yeah, but his last 2 days.
Practice out.
Yeah, Dawson the last 2 days, probably his best 2 days in camp in terms of frequency in the passing game going forward. All right, best connection is next, Maddy.
All right, best connection is going to Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. It was on fire from the start of camp. You could say whatever you want about the drama of the offseason, but Stephon Diggs came in here ready to go, and so did Josh Allen. The two look like they're taking another step together. It's hard to say that. I know it's hard to say that with how Josh Allen can improve, but hey, they look like that on the field. It was fun to see them have that smile, have that rapport again with each other. All is well with the Buffalo Bills, Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. There were some balls that Josh Allen threw to Steph Diggs that only Steph Diggs could have caught. He had a great camp. He's had, 3 straight seasons with the Bills where he's had over 1,200 receiving yards. I would expect that again this season out of a talented receiver like him.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. What do we got next on our list?
Moving
here?
on, we've got most consistent.
Oh, yeah, I know who that is.
And that has got to go to Gabe Davis.
Yeah. I think it's as good
in
a
the
camp as
first
we've
few
seen him have,
in the first few practices, he wasn't targeted too much. Stephon Diggs was getting targeted quite a bit in the first few practices, and then Gabe Davis came on. They started throwing the deep ball. They started involving Gabe Davis in more than that, and everything thrown his way, that man was catching. It's incredible to see an injury-free Gabe Davis out there. He spoke to media 2 weeks ago, I want to say. He was one of the first guys to speak, and he talked about how that ankle injury, he felt like he really took a step back in his game last season. He had over 800 receiving yards and had several touchdowns as well. I think 7 or 8 is the number 7. But he felt like he took a step back in his game. He said now this season, being healthy and not really feeling that pressure that was on him, he thinks it'll be a really good year for him as he enters his 4th year in the NFL. Can't believe it's already been 4 years, going to be 4 years for him. But yeah, he looks like a consistent target for Josh Allen. He is somebody who's going to be a reliable weapon this season, and I think we can expect big things out of him as long as he's healthy.
Yeah, and I would say, too, that he does – there's every reason to expect he's going to have a really good year. The training camp has gone consistently well for him. And one of the things that, plagued him last year was his inefficiency. He had a lot of drops. I haven't seen too much of that.
No.
I've seen the ball be
a
on
lot
the
more
ground.
sure-handed.
But he has, like today, he made a nice catch in traffic right at the goal line in one-on-ones.
And he looks strong in there.
He does look – he looks a little bit thicker in his lower half to me.
Steve and I kind of noticed. Yeah, his legs are a lot more muscular.
And
a lot of squats this offseason.
It's as consistent a training camp as we've seen Gabe Davis have. He flashed certainly his first year when he got on the field right away and all that. But this training camp, he was noticeably consistent and at a high level.
All right, let's talk newcomers, offense and defense. Most exciting newcomers. What do you have on both sides of the ball
Most exciting newcomer on offense, you could have named a couple of guys here, but I'm giving it to Trent Sherfield. Josh Allen is just a better quarterback when he has a slot option, and Trent Sherfield is going to be one of those options for the Bills on offense this season. He's entering his 6th NFL season. Even with the new offense that he's learning with the Bills, Ken Dorsey said he's done a tremendous job picking it up in Buffalo's offense in the short time that we've been in camp, in the 2.5 weeks that we've been in camp. He's gotten several targets thrown his way against some of the best defensive players against first team, and he's had a bunch of great catches too, some in traffic as well. So I think this is going to be another guy who's going to be reliable on this offense.
Okay, let's flip it over to the other side of the ball.
So on defense, Brownie and I were talking about this. He helped me pick who it was going to be because you could give this to a couple different guys. There are some newcomers on defense, and we thought Poona Ford was deserving of this award. And it's really hard to see during training camp. It's hard to see the lines kind of go up against each other and figure out, okay, who's really having a good camp, who's been in on a lot of plays because they're going thud. You can't really finish a sack. You can't really finish a quarterback pressure. I mean, you can make the guys move out of the pocket, but the plays you can't really finish when you're on the defensive line. But Poona Ford has been in there a lot with the ones, with the twos. He's been rotating through the defensive line. He's done a good job in the middle plugging up those holes, and we look at what Ed Oliver is as a defensive tackle, and he's a better defensive tackle when you have a good guy next to him. And I think Poona Ford can be one of those rotational players to come in and out of the defense with fresh legs. He's got a solid frame. He's not a taller guy, but the weight that he has on him, I think it's going to be really good for the interior of the defensive line to let the guys on the end kind of go roam and go get after the quarterback.
Yeah, I think he's been one of those guys that has been a pleasant surprise for his teammates. I think the coaching staff, and they kind of knew about him and stuff, but I think his teammates have really, started to get their arms around him. He doesn't. We had Harrison or Jordan Phillips on a day or two. It was yesterday, and you can't get Poona to speak. He's so quiet,
very quiet.
And but for that, I think the defensive linemen and stuff really come to really like this guy. And Brownie and I have been talking a lot about how effective he is down inside because of how he's built and his power.
Yeah,
he can get so low to the ground.
Well, he's only 5'11", so he's already down there. And I think the way it's working in terms of the rotation, he's got a good chance to be Daquan Jones' rotational sub when they rotate those top four guys out and bring a new four in. Trent Sherfield, by the way, I would call at the end of camp the leader in the clubhouse for the slot receiver role. I think he's been the most consistent player there over Khalil Shakir and Deontay Hardy. All right, let's go to most improved. So this is usually a player that was on the roster last year and made some dramatic strides in their personal game this year.
So the tight ends have been on fire this training camp. We've seen the offense use a lot of their tight ends during practices. We talked about Dawson Knox. The last two practices he's had were great. Dalton Kincaid has had a great camp. You know who else has shined is Quentin Morris, another tight end for the Buffalo Bills. He was on this team last year. He played in 14 games. He's played a role in special teams as well, so that makes him a valuable player on this roster. But balls were thrown his way, and he would not drop them. Today he caught a ball, I think, from Kyle Allen near the sideline. He kind of bobbled it a little bit, but was able to make the catch before going out of bounds. This is a bigger-bodied tight end on the roster. He doesn't have the height that Dalton and Dawson do. He does have the body to be a blocker and to help out on special teams. But when given the ball on offense, he's made a lot of plays, and he's improved quite a bit. He was someone last year who would shine a little bit during camp practices and maybe make a good catch here, a good catch there. But I felt like this year it was a lot more consistent from him.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. And he hasn't really dropped anything all camp.
Yeah, you can say this too. I mean, Quentin comes in. You got a first-round rookie tight end. You got Dawson Knox, who's
he's a former undrafted rookie
on his second contract. Quentin Morris, you could make a case he's benefiting from maybe a shift in philosophy of the offense.
They're going to keep some tight ends on this roster.
If they're going to use 12 personnel, they're going to need more than two tight ends. Just the ones on the field at any given time. They're going to have to backups. They have to have three tight end sets. The whole thing. And he's benefiting from, I think, added opportunities because of the fact that it looks like this offense is going to maybe have some tight end plan.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a part of it. And particularly when he gets his reps. It's the same offense they're running for Kincaid and Dawson Knox.
All right, the last award is pretty much a layup. Best comeback.
Oh my gosh, it's Damar Hamlin. It has been so fun to see that smile out of him. It's been so fun to see him dancing at practices. He put the pads on. That was a big step for him. He had an interception during a practice. That was another big step for him. And then he came out at the return of the blue and red practice and went through practice. I mean, he's been doing everything that his teammates have been doing. He has not been held back in any sort of form or fashion. He's been out there with the guys every single day. He said, I wish I could go through this recovery process under a rock and come out when I'm 100%, but I'm doing it out in front of everybody. And I think that's inspiring for a lot of people, just to watch his comeback, just to see his comeback story unfold in a lot of ways. And it's been 7 months since January, 7 months into this comeback, into this recovery process. And I think he's, from the outside looking in, it's looked incredible for him. It's looked great. They're taking it one day at a time. Sean McDermott was asked about the plan for Damar for that first preseason game on Saturday, and he said, everything is on schedule. He would not say he's definitely going to play or no, he's not going to play. He said, we are on schedule with Damar Hamlin, so we'll see what that looks like come Saturday. But he's been back out there. It was, I think, one of my favorite moments of camp was the first day of practice, hearing the roar of the crowd as Damar Hamlin ran onto the field. It brought tears to my eyes to see him be out there with his teammates with full pads on, but he's been getting after it.
Yeah, you think about it, it's and there's no exaggeration. He's the answer to millions of prayers. There was 27 million people watching that night, and there's a lot of people praying for him. And here he is back on the field and looks 1,000%.
Yeah, it's interesting to watch all the stages of him coming back, getting back on the practice field, cleared for practice in the spring, and then putting pads on for the first time. And then last Friday, first time back in the stadium, dressed to play football in the return of the blue and red scrimmage. Now there's going to be another step on Saturday. First preseason game, live contact, hitting. We'll have to see how that goes. Coach McDermott was kind of asked about that this morning, and he said, we will go as Damar wishes to go. So that's not a definite that he's dressing and playing on Saturday, but I would tend to think he would, because this is a goal of his and probably another hurdle that he wants to clear. But it will be something that will be very much under the microscope Saturday at 1 p.m. I mean, that's...
Yeah, I think that's the final big step for Damar, and I can't get inside the guy's mind. And certainly he's been reticent to share his deepest thoughts. But I think that is a big deal. Once he gets over that hurdle, I don't think it's one of those things where you just step over it like it's not there. I think there's going to be a lot of thought on his part put into what it's going to mean when he actually does get out there and they blow the whistle for real. That's a big That's a big
No, it
thing.
is.
I don't know if I can get my mind around it as we sit here talking.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's difficult for a lot of us to quantify. I mean, I'm sure there are players, there's dozens and hundreds of players that have come back from major injuries to resume their career, and maybe they can understand a very small part of what Damar is dealing with, the mental hurdle, so to speak, to not think about what happened in the past and just focus on what's in front of you. But when you have a cardiac event, I think that's a little bit different than an ACL. No offense to people that have had those major knee injuries. It's just different. I'm sorry. It's just a little bit different. So, yeah, we'll all be focused on that for sure Saturday at Highmark Stadium when the Bills take on the Colts at 1 p.m. So Maddy's Training Camp Awards, if you missed some of those, can be found at buffalobills.com. So be sure to check those out if you get an opportunity now that camp is over and done with. The team will continue practicing in a preseason type setting. They will just now be doing it at One Bills Drive going forward right up until the regular season. Speaking of Saturday's preseason game against the Colts, to no one's surprise, Anthony Richardson, fourth pick in the draft by the Colts, is going to start on Saturday for the Colts. So their top quarterback and what they're hoping is their franchise quarterback going forward will get the start. I know we're not surprised by it. What do we expect, Maddy?
I'm excited to see our guys go up against a young rookie like that. We heard from Sean McDermott. He said Josh Allen is not going to play. Stephon Diggs is not going to play. A few other guys are not going to play, but most of the starters will see about a quarter and a half-ish. So, hey, if this is going to be the guy that's going to be the future of the Colts, I want to see what he looks like. I want to see what he looks like going up against some of our starters and then up against some of the guys who are fighting for roster spots. You're going to hopefully get some really good live action against a guy like him who a lot of people said coming out of the draft, this is an athletic quarterback. This is a quarterback that makes sense in today's NFL with what he can do, and drew some Josh Allen comparisons.
I told Brownie this, and a lot of my buddies that we talk about all this stuff. Anthony Richardson is the guy I would have picked in this draft. Big, strong, got all the tools. He's a very big upside. The detriment against him is 13 starts as a collegiate.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not scared by that. If you can check him out and talk to him and find out how intelligent he is, what kind of leader he is, what his goal is,
how he learns.
If his goal is to say, listen, I want to be one of the best quarterbacks out there when I'm playing. I want to be in the upper echelon all the time in the NFL. If that's his goal, that's your guy. He's going to do what it takes to get there.
Right.
I think that's it. He's the guy I would have picked.
Mm-hmm.
Well, elite physical traits, and we know how much Steve likes elite physical traits in players.
Because I don't have any. That's
not anymore.
Hey, you did. Stop.
You did at least at one time. I don't know that me and Maddie ever had elite physical traits. I mean,
I had
neither of us
traits,
are over 5'8".
Short traits.
But if you look at it, the word out of Colts camp has been shock, awe, amazement. I mean, his teammates are just stunned by some of the things that he has done in training camp for Indianapolis. Josh Downs, his draft classmate, who was drafted by the Colts, I think in the 3rd round out of North Carolina, he's running with him every day in practice. He said it's amazing. The guy rolls to his left, which is not his throwing arm side. He's a right-handed thrower. He flicks his wrist, and it goes 60 yards.
Yeah.
You're going to find somebody on Saturday in the building at Highmark Stadium whose arm strength may be every bit as good as Josh Allen's in Anthony Richardson. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be as accurate, but he's going to be able to throw it just as far.
This too, he can outrun Josh.
And just as effortlessly. Yeah, he runs a 4.4, by the way.
Yeah, and he's big. He's a big dude. You'll see that right away. I mean, he's not quite as tall as Josh, but he's as thick. I think the guy's got a great future. I'm all in on him. I think he's going to be a difference maker for that franchise.
This is the guy's first preseason game, first taste of live action in the NFL. I'm excited. Preseason games, people can say, this is going to be boring. I don't want to watch. I'm excited to see this.
Now let's talk about that for a second, because what Anthony Richardson is going to see is probably pretty vanilla stuff from the Bills. Sean McDermott is not going to be playing his hand, so to speak, in terms of the play calls he wants to use in the regular season. You're going to keep those close to the vest. So the reads may be very, relatively speaking, easier for him in this setting. Can he still make the throws on time, in rhythm? And that's what Colts fans are going to be looking for from Anthony Richardson. As Maddie mentioned, no Josh Allen. He's not going to play in this first preseason game. Neither is Stephon Diggs, and probably a couple of other starters sprinkled in as well. So let's talk the backup quarterback spot, Kyle Allen, and then Matt Barkley behind him. Mm-hmm. There's some ground that Kyle Allen clearly has to cover here in the preseason to convince people, hey, you know what? I am more than capable of handling this number 2 job behind Josh. What do you need to see from him, knowing he's going to get about half the game, Steve?
Just be sound. I mean, don't take any delay of game penalties. Don't fumble the ball on the center snap. Look like you have an option if they send some pressure, know where to go with the football. Even if you're not completing those passes, if you're making the right decision, trying to get it to the right guy, even if he's covered up or if it's incomplete for whatever reason, your decision making has to be sound. Throw the football away to avoid a sack. Some of those stuff, some of the basic things. You don't expect him to go in there and move down the field effortlessly, never facing a third down, never getting in trouble, never taking a sack, that kind of thing. But you want to see him make the right decisions and not have any of the stuff I said, silly mental mistakes, delay of games, and that kind of thing.
Maddie, I think the assumption is, we don't know this, but the assumption is he will be first quarterback in, knowing Josh is sitting and watching and wearing a headset and holding a clipboard. So he will get presumably all the time with the starting unit while he is in the game. What does he have to do with the starters, knowing he's playing with the best players on their roster, with the exception of Diggs and Allen? what does he have to do playing with the best that his team has to offer on the offensive side of the ball?
I mean,
Hand it
Got to
off.
make plays.
Just
right?
make
you
the
got
handoff.
You got to make plays.
It's got to make plays,
and
though.
I think the communication with your offensive line needs to be solid. We've seen a little bit of up and down with that. You need to know what's going on there, and you need to have that right communication going on with your center. Consistency out of your offense. Go down the field during a drive. Don't take stupid penalties. Don't take sacks like you said. We did see a little bit of athleticism out of him today toward the end of practice.
Right.
They were
Yep.
in the red zone. He was facing some pressure, so he pump faked right, then he rolled left and found, I think it was it Joel Wilson for a touchdown.
Yes.
But that was a little impressive out of him. I want to see a little bit more of that. But with smart decision making as well, because
Right.
those two things sometimes can be opposite in ways, but I want to see them go hand in hand. And when you have a first team offense out there, they should be lifting your play up because
Yeah,
you're
that's a
playing
good
with the
point.
best guys on
Yeah,
offense.
that's what I was
So I
getting
want to see you play like one of
Yeah.
the best guys on
and,
offense.
And it doesn't mean that the offense, he has to like be the guy like Josh is the engine of that offense. Just manage it. Get it to the right guy. Get the
Yeah,
ball
make
out
it
of your
functional.
hand. Yes, function as a quarterback and make it look like an NFL offense. That doesn't mean you have to, never take a loss or anything like that. But it needs to look like an NFL offense with you at the helm, and that comes down to perception as much as anything.
Another interesting development we saw out on the practice field today, for the better part of the last 4 or 5 days, second-round pick Osiris Torrance has gotten his fair share of reps with the ones, and then Ryan Bates would rotate in as well. As Maddy mentioned, that right guard competition is still moving along without anyone
Alive and
separating
well.
themselves. As a matter of fact, I can't remember if it was Coach Dorsey yesterday or Coach McDermott today that said it's still very close. I think it was Dorsey
Yeah, it was
yesterday
Dorsey
that said that.
yesterday.
Today, it's almost all Bates at right guard, wire to wire, which we have not seen
Right.
in probably over a week. And then we see Osiris Torrance on the other side of the center for the first time in camp. I mean, he has been a right guard, lock it down, flipped over to the other side for a little bit today. So what do we read into that, Steve, if anything?
A little bit of experimentation, probably, giving him a chance. I don't know, because it could be they spin it positive. They're trying to find a way to get him on the field, Bates or whatever. Or,
He's not taking McGovern off the field, though.
right, spin it negative. McGovern's not playing up to speed. They need to find a way to help him, or Osiris isn't playing very well at right guard, and they're going to get his other hand on the ground, see if he can do it that way. Maybe he's a left-handed guy or a right-handed, or however that works. There's ways to see it, positive and negative.
Or maybe Bates is playing much more consistently.
Maybe. But I think there's no question they're also finding out, and this is the time to do it, find out if in a pinch 2 guys get injured, Osiris, we need you on the left side for this series. We got to finish out a game with you on the
Is
left.
he capable?
Yeah. Will you blow a gasket? That's basically what I think that's what that means.
And we've seen Ryan Bates rep a lot at center. I mean,
Yeah.
he's gotten quite a bit of time at center, so you start to read into that a little bit. Not that Ryan Bates isn't doing a good job in the competition, but how you're shifting other guys when Ryan Bates is at center.
Right.
And he's been taking reps with the center group in all different teams, first, second, and third team at times. So that has been interesting to see with how they've shifted the line play about with that.
Yeah, he's definitely cross-training, and I think that's with a purpose in mind as well, because Mitch Morse, as we know, has a history of concussions. Each of the last couple of years, he's gotten dinged, and he's missed a game, and I think they want a viable answer to plug in the event that happens again, and I think they really like Bates as an option there, and so even if we get to September and Ryan Bates is your starting right guard, I think if Morse gets dinged and has to come out, Bates slides over and Osiris would step on at guard with Bates going to the pivot. I think that's how it would unfold based on what we've seen so far
Right.
in training camp.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a little bit with Torrance going over the left side. I think that spells probably more of what it is than anything. They're finding out what if there's a bus crash.
Who's
Yeah.
our next up?
How can
Disaster plan?
Yeah, exactly. It's a disaster plan. Can he? And you'll probably see him at times move all the way out, left tackle, right tackle,
Oh, gosh, I don't know if
just
that's
in
what-
case. You never know, but they got to find out and get him acclimated, so it's not like you want me to do what, kind of thing. So they'll get him a few reps in there so he can at least it won't be a completely foreign concept to him.
Maddie, thanks very much for popping by over here at the Delta Sonic location. We had to pull you off campus.
Of course.
So thank you for coming and sharing your training camp awards. Once again, BuffaloBills.com if you want to see those from top to bottom.